Hello and welcome back. My name is Jonas and today we were gonna do some live demonstration of our FourZero studio as we promised you in the last video. So as you can see, I already downloaded and installed FourZero and I created some small demonstration project for you. So on the left hand side you can see the project explorer, so you can write some readme file for your project. You see a list of all the devices that are used in your project. You can define your own data maps, which is kind of your own data types that you can specify. Then you have a list of all your applications. This means all of your programs. And you have a list of all your function blocks, so the function blocks that you designed on your own. If you are finished creating your devices and putting your programs, transferring your programs onto your devices, then you can connect them all together in the run environment. This is what we see here. And you can see here in this small demo project, we have a run environment of 4 different devices and they all have different platforms. So what I did is, for starting, I created my own function, which just consists of an input and produces one output. So in yellow, you always see the inputs or outputs are always colored in yellow. In this case, my function just takes one Boolean input and inverts this Boolean input with the NOT function block and then sends an output again. You see that every function block has an upper part and a lower part. In the upper part, this is the event section, whereas the lower part, this is the data section. So we're just taking this Boolean input and inverting it with this standard function block f0. You can find the f0 function block and many other ones that are really useful in the toolbox on the right hand side. Just select one and put it in there by dragging and dropping. Additionally to the f0, you see that I wanted to have some logging of the input value I am receiving. So our toolbox does not provide any logging functionality. So in this case I had to do this. I had to write this function block on my own. So this is why here we see the logger as a user-defined function block on the left-hand side in the Project Explorer. So in the function block editor you have 3 tabs, namely interface, state machine and code. In the interface you can define the data and event connectors. Then every function block is a state machine, so you can define different states and different algorithms for the states. And here you see my logic that I am using to write my log files. In fact, I'm just opening a file handle and writing the current time as well as the value into some file. So after we have successfully created our application, we now can define devices. As I showed you before, we will have 4 different devices, so that's why I created here 4 devices with the new device command. As soon as you have devices, you can specify the platform. In here you see the selection of all the different supported platforms. Then you can specify the IP address, and for most of the devices there's also deploy path, which just says FourZero where to store your project files on the device. Then you can create an app in the device. And if we open this app, in here we have a app editor which is split into 3 parts, as you see here. On the left hand side we have the service provider inputs, on the right hand side we have service provider outputs, and in the middle we have the function blocks or application block part. So if we create some application, like my function for example, we have this input and this output. So now we can go to the device and just drag and drop my function into the device. This means that when deploying a project later on, this function will be loaded onto my device. So now we have an input and an output in my function. So now I have to specify where does the input come from, where does the output go to. You could either connect different application blocks with each other, like this, or you could say that your inputs or outputs are interacting, so that they are using service providers. Service providers always means that the input is coming from some external source. External source could be some physical I/O, like what we see here. For the PLC Next, we are using a digital output. It could also be some communication protocol. This is what we see here. This is UDP, which is some network protocol that we're using most of the time to realize communication between systems or between devices. So with this, we are ready to go. So we have our input service provider, which receives a UDP network message, then goes into my function, where it will invert the value received and send an output, and at the same time it will lock the value, and the output will then go to digital out 0 on my PLC Next. I did the same thing for Raspberry Pi. In this case I also subscribed to the same network message, but as output I'm setting the GPIO 0 pin of the Raspberry Pi. On the Raspberry Pi, on the Pi extend, I do the same, but I'm setting a digital output 0 of the Pi extend. And on Windows, as we don't have any physical I/Os connected right now, we just publish another UDP message, which could then be used by some other device. So afterwards, I can combine all of those devices together in the run environment, and we're good to go. So by hitting the start button, I can deploy the apps and have them running on every device. So if I already did that, so I can directly connect to my devices. So now you see that I hit the connect button, so I get into the monitoring mode. And now I can have a look at all of the devices in my run environment. For example, for Windows, I have my app. Now also this arrow indicates that the app is running. I see that my function block is running as well. And in here I can watch. So if I'm now sending an UDP input, I'm using another software to do so. You see that we receive some value, which will trigger an event. We receive the value true, and the output will be false. At the same time, there will be some logging taking place. So if we have a look at our Windows device, we said that our logging or our app will run into ctemp my project, and if we check this folder, we also see that there is a log file named myinput.log. That's what I specified here, and we also see that we logged some value today at 1:39 p.m. So seems like this is working. I can also check the other devices like PLC Next. And what you see here is that I was on Windows and I was subscribing to the UDP message, and the UDP message is distributed to all of the devices at the same time. This is why you also see it on PLC Next, that also PLC Next already received some value. So this was general overview on how to build a distributed system, how to have an application, how to build your own application block, how to create your own function block, and how to distribute one application block onto all of those devices. So this example shows that you can really reuse and port your code that you write onto all of the devices. And then we also saw how to set some physical or network inputs and outputs, and how they are connected with your function or application blocks. Of course, for different platforms, the available inputs and outputs here on the service provider side will be different depending on the different physical inputs and outputs available. So I hope you liked the video, and I hope that you got to know FourZero a bit better, and thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.